May our Father decide. Holy Spirit, Jesus. You give me 30 minutes a day. The word of our Father in heaven came to me, O mortal. Speak to your fellow countrymen and say to them, when I bring the sword against a country, the citizens of that country, take one of their number and appoint. Pray this with hand me over the fan. I'm gonna turn that off. When I bring the sword against a country, the citizens of that country, take one of their number and appoint. Take one of their number and appoint him their watchman. Suppose he sees the sword advancing against the country, and he blows the horn and warns the people. If anybody hears the sound of the horn, but ignores the warning, and the sword comes and dispatches him, his blood shall be on his own head. Since he heard the sound of the horn, but ignored the warning, his blood guilt shall be upon himself. Had he taken a warning, he would have saved his life. But if the watchman sees the sword advancing and does not blow the horn, so that the people are not warned, and the sword comes and destroys one of them, that person was destroyed for his own sins. However, I will demand a reckoning for his blood from the watchman. And now, O mortal, I have appointed you a watchman for the house of Israel. And whenever you hear a message from my mouth, you must transmit my warning to them. When I say to the wicked man, you shall die, but you have not spoken to warn the wicked man against his way, he, that wicked man, shall die for his sins. But I will demand a reckoning for his blood from you. But if you have warned the wicked man to turn back from his way, and he has not turned from his way, he shall die for his own sins, but you will have saved your life. Now, O mortal, say to the house of Israel, this is what you have been saying, O transgressions and our sins weigh heavily upon us. We are sick at heart about them. How can we survive? Say to them, as I live, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, it is not my desire that the wicked shall die, but that the wicked turn from his evil ways and live. Turn back from your evil ways, that you may not die, O house of Israel. Now, O mortal, say to your fellow countrymen, the righteousness of the righteous shall not save him when he transgresses, nor shall the wickedness of the wicked cause him to stumble when he turns back from his wickedness. The righteous shall not survive through his righteousness when he sins. When I say of the righteous, he shall surely live, and relying on his righteousness, he commits iniquity. None of his righteous deeds shall be remembered, but for the iniquity that he has committed, he shall die. So too, when I say to the wicked, you shall die, and he turns back from his sinfulness and does what is just right, if the wicked man restores a pledge, makes good what he has taken by robbery, follows the laws of life, and does not commit iniquity, he shall live, he shall not die. None of the sins that he committed shall be remembered against him. Since he does what is just and right, he shall live. Your fellow countrymen say, the way of our Father in heaven is unfair, but it is their way that is unfair. Amen. When a righteous man turns away from his righteous deeds and commits iniquity, he shall die for it. And when a wicked man turns back from his wickedness and does what is just and right, it is he who shall live by virtue of these things. And will you say, the way of our Father in heaven is unfair? I will judge each one of you according to his ways, O house of Israel. In the 12th year of our exile, on the 5th day of the 10th month, a fugitive came to me from Jerusalem and reported, the city has fallen. Now the hand of our Father in heaven had come upon me the evening before the fugitive arrived, and he opened my mouth before he came to me in the morning. Thus my mouth was open, and I was no longer speechless. The word of our Father in heaven came to me, O mortal, those who live in these ruins in the land of Israel argue, Abraham was but one man, yet he was granted possession of the land. We are many. Surely the land has been given as a possession to us. Therefore say to them, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, you eat with the blood, you raise your eyes to your fetishes, and you shed blood, yet you expect to possess the land. You have relied on your sword, you have committed abominations, you have all defiled other men's wives, yet you expect to possess the land. Thus shall you speak to them. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, as I live, those who are in the ruins shall fall by the sword, and those who are in the open I have allotted as food to the beasts, and those who are in the strongholds and caves shall die by pestilence. I will make the land a desolate waste, and her proud glory shall cease. and the mountains of Israel shall be desolate, with none passing through, and they shall know that I am my Father in heaven. When I make the land a desolate waste on account of all the abominations which they have committed, note well, O mortal, your fellow countrymen, who converse about you by the walls and in the doorways of their houses, and say to each other and propose to one another, come and hear what word has issued from our Father in heaven. They will come to you in crowds and sit before you in throngs, and will hear your words, but they will not obey them, for they produce nothing but lust with their mouths, and their hearts pursue nothing but gain. To them you are just a singer of bawdy songs, who has a sweet voice and plays skillfully. They hear your words, but will not obey them. But when it comes, it will. They shall know that a prophet has been among them. Amen. The word of our Father in heaven came to me, O mortal, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, to the shepherds, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, you shepherds of Israel, who have been tending yourselves. Is it not the flock the shepherds ought to tend? You partake of the fat, you clothe yourselves with the wool, and you slaughter the fatlings, but you do not tend the flock. You have not sustained the weak, healed the sick, or bandaged the injured. You have not brought back the strayed, or looked for the lost, but you have driven them with harsh rigor, and they have been scattered. For want of anyone to tend them, scattered, they have become prey for every wild beast. My sheep stray through all the mountains and over every lofty hill. My flock is scattered all over the face of the earth, with none to take thought of them and none to seek them. Hear then, O shepherds, the word of our Father in heaven. As I live, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, because my flock has been a spoil. My flock has been a prey for all the wild beasts, for want of anyone to tend them, since my shepherds have not taken thought of my flock. For the shepherds tended themselves instead of tending the flock. Hear indeed, O shepherds, the word of our Father in heaven. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I'm going to deal with the shepherds. I would demand a reckoning of them for my flock, and I would dismiss them from tending the flock. The shepherds shall not tend themselves any more, for I will rescue my flock from their mouths, and it shall not be their prey. For thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, here I am. I am going to take thought for my flock, and I will seek them out, as a shepherd seeks out his flock, when some animals in his flock have gotten separated. So I will seek out my flock. I will rescue them from all the places to which they were scattered on a day of cloud and gloom. I will take them out from the peoples and gather them from their countries, and I will bring them to their own land, and I will pasture them on the mountains of Israel by the watercourses, and in all the set up portions of the land. I will feed them in good grazing land, and the lofty hills of Israel shall be their pasture. There in the hills of Israel they shall lie down in a good pasture, and shall feed on rich grazing land. I myself will graze my flock, and I myself will let them lie down, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. I will look for the lost, and I will bring back the strayed. I will bandage the injured, and I will sustain the weak, and the fat and healthy ones I will destroy. I will tend them rightly. And as for you, my flock, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I'm going to judge between one animal and another. To the rams and the bucks, is it not enough for you to graze on choice grazing ground? But you must also trample with your feet what is left from your grazing. And is it not enough for you to drink clear water? But you must also muddy with your feet what is left. That's sad. That's what they do, Lidge. If you're watching this, or any other brother or sister, is it not enough for them to drink that clear water? But then they go and muddy the water that we drink. And must my flock graze on what your feet have trampled, and drink what your feet have muddied? And surely thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, to them, Here am I. I am going to decide between the stout animals and the lean, because you pushed with flank and shoulder against the feeble ones, and butted them with your horns until you scattered them abroad. I will rescue my flock, and they shall no longer be a spoil. I will decide between one animal and another. Then I will appoint a single shepherd over them to tend them. My servant David, he shall tend them. He shall be a shepherd to them. I, our Father in heaven, will be the Elohim, and my servant David shall be a ruler among them. I, our Father in heaven, have spoken, and I will grant them a covenant of friendship. I will banish vicious beasts from their land, and they shall live secure in the wasteland. They shall even sleep in the woodland. I will make these in the environs of my hill a blessing. I will send down the rain in its seasons. In its season, rains that bring blessing. The trees of the field shall yield their fruit, and the land shall yield its produce. My people shall continue secure on its own soil. They shall know that I am our Father in heaven. When I break the bars of their yoke and rescue them from those who enslave them, they shall no longer be a spoil for the nations, and the beasts of the earth shall not devour them. They shall dwell secure and untroubled. I shall establish for them a planting of renown. They shall no more be carried off by famine, and they shall not have to bear again the taunts of the nations. They shall know that I, our Father in heaven, their Elohim, am with them, and they, the house of Israel, are my people, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. For you, my for you, my flock that I tend, are men, and I, your shepherd, am your Elohim, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. The word of our Father in heaven came to me, O mortal, set your face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it. Say to it, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I'm going to deal with you, Mount Seir. I will stretch out my hand against you and make you an utter waste. I will turn your towns into ruins, and you shall be a desolation. Then you shall know that I am our Father in heaven, because you harbored an ancient hatred and handed the people of Israel over to the sword in their time of calamity, the time set for their punishment. As surely as I live, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, I will doom you with blood. Blood shall pursue you. I swear that for your bloodthirsty hatred, blood shall pursue you. I will make Mount Seir an utter waste, and I will keep all passerby away from it. I will cover its mountains with the slain. Men slain by the sword shall lie on your hills, in your valleys, and in all your watercourses. I will make you a desolation for a time. Your town shall never be inhabited, and you shall know that I am our Father in heaven, because you thought the two nations and the two lands shall be mine, and we shall possess them, although our Father in heaven was there. Surely as I live, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, I will act with the same anger and passion that you acted within your hatred of them, and I will make myself known through them. When I judge you, you shall know that I, our Father in heaven, have heard all the taunts you uttered against the hills of Israel. They have been laid waste, they have been given to us as prey, and you spoke arrogantly against me and multiplied your words against me. I have heard it. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, when the whole earth rejoices, I will make you a desolation. As you rejoice with the heritage of the house of Israel, as you rejoice when the heritage of the house of Israel was laid waste, so will I treat you, the hill country of Seir, and the whole of Edom. All of it shall be laid waste, and they shall know that I am my Father in heaven. And you, O mortal, prophesy to the mountains of Israel, and say, O mountains of Israel, hear the word of our Father in heaven. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, because the enemy gloats over you. Aha, those ancient heights have become our possession. Therefore prophesy and say, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, just because they eagerly lusted to see you become a possession of the other nations round about, so that you have become the butt of gossip in every language and of the jibes from every people. Truly, you mountains of Israel, hear the word of our Father in heaven, Elohim. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, to the mountains and the hills, to the watercourses and the valleys, and to the desolate waste and deserted cities, which have become a prey and a laughingstock to the other nations round about. Assuredly, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I have indeed spoken in my blazing wrath against the other nations and against all of Edom, which with wholehearted glee and with contempt have made my land a possession for themselves, for pasture and for prey. Yes, prophesy by the land of Israel, and say to the mountains and the hills, to the watercourses and to the valleys, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, behold, I declare my blazing wrath, because you have suffered the taunting of the nations. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I hereby swear that the nations which surround you shall in their turn suffer disgrace. But you, O mountains of Israel, shall yield your produce and bear your fruit of my people Israel, for their return is near, for I will care for you. I will turn to you, and you shall be tilled and sown. I will settle a large population on you, the whole house of Israel. The town shall be resettled, and the ruined cities rebuilt. I will multiply men and beasts upon you, and they shall increase and be fertile. And I will resettle you as you were formerly, and will make you more prosperous than you were at first. And you shall know that I am our Father in heaven. I will lead men, my people Israel, to you, and they shall possess you. You shall be their heritage, and you shall not again cause them to be bereaved. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, because they say to you, you are a land that devours men. You have been a bereaver of your nations. Assuredly, you shall devour men no more. You shall never again bereave your nations, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. No more will I allow the jibes of the nations to be heard against you. No longer shall you suffer the taunting of the peoples, and never again shall you cause your nations to stumble, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. Word. The word of our Father in heaven came to me. O mortal, when the house of Israel dwelt on their own soil, they defiled it with their ways and their deeds. Their ways were in my sight like the uncleanness of a menstruous woman. So I poured out my wrath on them for the blood which they shed upon their land, and for the fetishes with which they defiled it. I scattered them among the nations, and they were dispersed through the countries. I punished them in accordance with their ways and their deeds. But when they came to those nations, they caused my holy name to be profaned. And in that it was said of them, these are the people of our Father in heaven, yet they had to leave his land. Therefore I am concerned for my holy name, which the house of Israel have caused to be profaned among the nations to which they have come. Say to the house of Israel, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, not for your sake will I act, O house of Israel, but for my holy name, which you have caused to be profaned among the nations to which you have come. I will sanctify my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, among whom you have caused it to be profaned, and the nations shall know that I am our Father in heaven, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, when I manifest my holiness before their eyes. Through you I will take you from among the nations and gather you from all the countries, and I will bring you back to your own land. I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean. I will cleanse you from all your uncleanness and from all your fetishes, and I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit into you. I will remove the heart of stone from your body and give you a heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit into you. Thus I will cause you to follow my laws and faithfully to observe my rules. Then you shall dwell in the land which I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your Elohim. And when I have delivered you from all your uncleanness, I will summon the grain and make it abundant, and I will not bring famine upon you. I will make the fruit of your trees and the crops of your fields abundant, so that you shall never again be humiliated before the nations because of famine. Then you shall recall your evil ways and your base conduct, and you shall loathe yourselves for your iniquities and your abhorrent practices. Not for your sake will I act, and declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. Take good note. Be ashamed and humiliated because of your ways, O house of Israel. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, when I have cleansed you of all your iniquities, I will become your settlement, and the ruined places shall be rebuilt, and the desolate land, after lying waste in the sight of every passerby, shall again be tilled, and men shall say, that land once desolate has become like the Garden of Eden, and the cities once ruined, desolate and ravaged, are now populated and fortified. And the nations that are left around you shall know that I, our Father in heaven, have rebuilt the ravaged places and replanted the desolate land. I, our Father in heaven, have spoken and will act. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim. Moreover, in this I will respond to the house of Israel and act for their sake. I will multiply the people like sheep, as Jerusalem is filled with sacrificial sheep during her festivals. So shall the ruined cities be filled with flocks of people, and they shall know that I am our Father in heaven. The hand of our Father in heaven came upon me. He took me out by the Spirit of our Father in heaven and set me down in the valley. It was full of bones. He led me all around them. They were very many of them spread over the valley, and they were very dry. He said to me, O mortal, can these bones live again? I replied, O our Father in heaven, Elohim, only you know. And he said to me, prophesy over these bones and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of our Father in heaven. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, to these bones, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live again. I will lay sinews upon you and cover you with flesh and form skin over you, and I will put breath into you, and you shall live again, and you shall know that I am our Father in heaven. I prophesied as I had been commanded, and while I was prophesying, suddenly there was a sound of rattling, and the bones came together, bone to match bone. I looked, and there were sinews on them, and flesh had grown, and skin had formed over them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, prophesy to the breath, prophesy, O mortal, say to the breath, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, come, O breath, from the four winds, and breathe into these slain, that they may live again. I prophesied as he commanded me. The breath entered them, and they came to life and stood up on their feet, a vast multitude. And he said to me, O mortal, these bones are in the whole house of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up, our hope is gone, we are doomed. Prophesy therefore and say to them, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I'm going to open your graves and lift you out of the graves, O my people, and bring you to the land of Israel. You shall know, O my people, that I am my Father in heaven. When I have opened your graves and lifted you out of your graves, I will put my breath into you, and you shall live again, and I will set you upon your own soil. Then you shall know that I, our Father in heaven, have spoken and have acted, declares our Father in heaven. The word of our Father in heaven came to me, and you, O mortal, take a stick and write on it of Jehudah and the Israelites associated with him. And take another stick and write on it of Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel associated with him. Bring them close to each other, so that they become one stick joined together in your hand. And when any of your people ask you, won't you tell us what those actions of yours mean? Answer them, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I'm going to take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim and of the tribes of Israel associated with him, and I will place this stick of Jehudah upon it, and make them into one stick. They shall be joined in my hand. You shall hold up before their eyes the sticks which you have inscribed. And you shall declare to them, Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I am going to take the Israelite people from among the nations they have gone to, and gather them from every quarter, and bring them to their own land. I will make them a single nation in the land, on the hills of Israel, and one king shall be king of them all. Never again shall they be two nations, and never again shall they be divided into two kingdoms. Nor shall they ever again defile themselves by their fetishes and their abhorrent things, and by their own transgressions. I will save them in all their settlements where they sinned, and I will cleanse them. Then they shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim. My servant David shall be king over them. There shall be one shepherd for all of them. They shall follow my rules and faithfully obey my laws. Thus they shall remain in the land which I gave to my servant Jacob, and in which your fathers dwelt. They and their children's children shall dwell there forever. My servant David is their prince for all time. I will make a covenant of friendship with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. I will establish them and multiply them. I will place my sanctuary among them forever. My presence shall rest over them. I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And when my sanctuary abides among them forever, the nations shall know that I am our Father in heaven, do sanctify Israel. The word of our Father in heaven came to me. O mortal, turn your face toward God of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, Lo, I am coming to deal with you, O God, chief priest of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around and put hooks in your jaws and lead you out with all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed in splendor, a vast assembly, all of them with bucklers and shields. Wielding swords among them shall be Persia, Cush, and Put, everyone with shield and helmet. Gomorrah and all its cohorts, Beth Togarmah in the remotest parts of the north and all its cohorts. The many peoples with you, be ready, prepare yourselves, you and all the battalions mustered about you, and hold yourself in reserve for them. After a long time you shall be summoned. In the distant future you shall march against the land of a people restored from the sword, gather from the midst of many peoples against the mountains of Israel, which have long lain desolate, a people liberated from the nations, and now all dwellings secure. You shall advance, coming like a storm. You shall be like a cloud covering the earth, you and all your cohorts, and the many peoples with you. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, on that day a thought will occur to you, and you will conceive a wicked design. You will say, I will invade a land of open towns. I will fall upon a tranquil people living secure, all of them living in unwalled towns, and lacking bars and gates, in order to take spoil and seize plunder, and to turn your hand against repopulated waters, and against a people gathered from among nations, acquiring livestock and possessions, living at the center of the earth. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants and all the Magites of Tarshish will say to you, Have you come to take spoil? Is it to seize plunder that you assembled your horse to carry off silver and gold, to make off with livestock and goods, to gather and immerse booty, immerse treasure? Therefore prophesy, O mortal, and say to God, Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, surely on that day when my people Israel are living secure, you will take note, and you will come from your home in the farthest north, you and many peoples with you, all of them mounted on horses, a vast horde, a mighty army, and you will advance upon my people Israel like a cloud covering the earth. This shall happen on that distant day. I will bring you to my land, that the nations may know me when before their eyes I manifest my holiness through you, O God. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, why you are the one I spoke of in ancient days through my servants, the prophets of Israel, who prophesied for years in those days, that I will bring you against them on that day when God sets foot on the soil of Israel. Declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, my raging anger shall flare up, for I have decreed in my indignation and in my blazing wrath on that day a terrible earthquake that shall befall the land of Israel. The fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the beasts of the field, all creeping things that move on the ground, and every human being on earth shall quake before me. My mountains shall be overthrown, cliffs shall topple, and every wall shall crumble to the ground. I will then summon the sword against him throughout my mountains, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, and every man's sword shall be turned against his brother. I will punish him with pestilence and with bloodshed, and I will pour torrential rain, hailstones, and sulphurous fire upon him and his hordes, and the many peoples with him. Thus will I manifest my greatness and my holiness, and make myself known in the sight of many nations. And they shall know that I am my Father in heaven. And you, O mortal, prophesy against Gog, and say, Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, I am going to deal with you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around and drive you on, and I will take you from the far north and lead you toward the mountains of Israel. I will strike you bow from your left hand, and I will loosen the arrows from your right hand. You shall fall on the mountains of Israel, you and all your battalions, and the peoples who are with you, and I will give you as food to carrion birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field, as you lie in open fields. For I have spoken, declares our Father in heaven Elohim, and I will send a fire against Magog and against those who dwell secure in the coastlands, and they shall know that I am our Father in heaven. I will make my holy name known among my people Israel, and never again will I let my holy name be profaned, and the nations shall know that I, our Father in heaven, am holy in Israel. It has come, it has happened, declares our Father in heaven Elohim. This is that day that I decreed, then the inhabitants of the city of Israel will go out and make fires and feed them with the weapons, shields, and bucklers, bows and arrows, clubs and spears. They shall use them as fuel for 7 years. They will not gather firewood in the fields or cut any in the forest, but will use the weapons as fuel for their fires. They will despoil those who despoiled them and plunder those who plundered them, declares our Father in heaven Elohim. On that day I will assign to God a burial site there in Israel, the valley of the travelers. East of the sea it shall block the path of travelers. For their God and all his multitude will be buried. It shall be called the valley of Gog's multitude. The house of Israel shall spend 7 months burying them in order to cleanse the land. All the people of the land shall bury them. The day I manifest my glory shall bring renown to them, declares our Father in heaven Elohim. And they shall appoint men to serve permanently to traverse the land and bury any invaders who remain above ground in order to cleanse it. The search shall go on for a period of 7 months, as those who traverse the country make their rounds. Any one of them who sees a human bone shall erect a marker beside it until the barriers have interred them in the valley of God's multitude. There shall also be a city named Multitude, and thus the land shall be cleansed. And you, O mortal, say to every winged bird and to all the wild beasts, thus said our Father in heaven Elohim, assemble, come and gather from all around for the sacrificial feast that I am preparing for you, a great sacrificial feast upon the mountains of Israel. And eat flesh and drink blood. You shall eat the flesh of warriors, and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, rams, lambs, he-goats, and bulls, fatlings of Bashan, all of them. You shall eat fat to satiety, and drink your fill of blood from the sacrificial feast that I have prepared for you, and you shall sate yourselves in my table with horses, charioteers, warriors, and all fighting men, declares our Father in heaven Elohim. Thus will I manifest my glory among the nations, and all the nations shall see the judgment that I executed and the power that I wielded against them. From that time on, the house of Israel shall know that I, our Father in heaven, am their Elohim, and the nations shall know that the house of Israel were exiled only for their iniquity, because they trespassed against me, so that I hid my face from them and delivered them into the hands of their adversaries. And they all fell by the sword. When I hid my face from them, I dwelt with them according to their uncleanness and their transgressions. Assuredly, thus said our Father in heaven Elohim, I will now restore the fortunes of Jacob and take the holy house of Israel back in love, and I will be zealous for my holy name. They will bear their shame when all the trespasses that they committed against me, when they dwell in their land, secure and untroubled, when I brought them back from among the peoples and gathered them out of the lands of their enemies, and have manifested my holiness through them in the sight of many nations. They shall know that I, our Father in heaven, am their Elohim. When having exiled them among the nations, I gathered them back into the land, and leave none of them behind. I will never again hide my face from them, for I will pour out my spirit upon the house of Israel, declares our Father in heaven Elohim, which he did. I believe we got time for one more. In the 25th year of our exile, the 14th year after the city had fallen, at the beginning of the year, the 10th day of the month, on that very day, the hand of our Father in heaven came upon me, and he brought me there. He brought me in visions of Elohim to the land of Israel, and he set me down on a very high mountain, on which there seemed to be the outline of a city on the south. He brought me over to it, and there standing at the gate was a man who shone like copper in his hand, where a cord of linen and a measuring rod. The man spoke to me. Mortal, look closely and listen attentively, and note well everything I am going to show you. For you have been brought here in order to be shown and report everything you see to the house of Israel. Along the outside of the temple area ran a wall on every side. The rod that the man held was 6 cubits long, plus 1 handbreadth for each cubit. And when he applied it to that structure, it measured one rod deep and 1 rod high. He went up to the gate that faced eastward and mounted its steps. He measured the threshold of the gate. It was 1 rod deep. The one threshold was 1 rod deep. Each recess was 1 rod wide and 1 rod deep, with a partition of 5 cubits between recesses. And the threshold of the gate at the inner vestibule of the gate was 1 rod deep. For when he measured it at the inner vestibule of the gate, it was 1 rod deep. Next, he measured the vestibule of the gate, and it measured 8 cubits, and its supports 2 cubits. The vestibule of the gate was at its inner end. On either side of the eastern gate there were three recesses, all three of the same size. Of identical sizes were also the support on either side. He measured the opening of the gate and found it 10 cubits wide, while the gate itself measured 13 cubits across. At the fronts of the recesses on either side were barriers of 1 cubit. The recesses on either side were 6 cubits deep. The openings faced each other directly across the great passage, so that when he measured from rear, a recess to rear, a recess, he obtained a width of 25 cubits. He made the vestibule 60 cubits and the gate next to the support on every side of the court, and the distance from the front of the outer gate to the front of the inner vestibule of the gate was 50 cubits. The recesses and their supports had windows with frames on the interior of the gate complex on both sides, and the interiors of the vestibules also had windows on both sides, and the supports were adorned with palms. He took me into the outer court. There were chambers there, and there was the pavement laid out all around the court. There were 30 chambers on the pavement. Pavements flanked the gates. The depth of the lower pavements paralleled that of the gates. Then he measured the width of the lower court from in front of the inner gate to in front of the outer gate, 100 cubits. After the east gate, the north gate. Next, he measured the gate of the outer court that faced north, its length and its width, its 3 recesses on either side, and its supports, as also its vestibule. It measured like the first gate 50 cubits in length and 25 cubits in width. Its windows and those of its vestibule, as also its palm trees, corresponded to those of the gate that faced east. From the outside, one had to climb 7 steps to reach it, and its vestibule was ahead of them. Like the east gate, the north gate faced a gate leading into the inner forecourt. And when he measured the distance from gate to gate, it was 100 cubits. Then he took me to the south side. There was also a gate on the south side, and he got the same measurements as before for its supports and its vestibule. Both it and its vestibule had windows like the aforementioned ones. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. The staircase consisted of 7 steps. Its vestibule was ahead of them, and its supports were decorated on both sides with palm trees. And the court likewise had a gate facing south. And on the south side too, he measured a distance of 100 cubits from the outer gate to the inner gate. He now took me into the inner forecourt through its south gate. When he measured the south gate, it had the same measurements as the foregoing. Its recesses, its supports, and its vestibule had the same measurements. Both it and its vestibule had windows on both sides. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Vestibules on both sides, 25 cubits long, 5 cubits wide. Its vestibule, however, gave on the outer court. Its support were adorned on either side with palms, and its staircase consisted of 8 steps. Then he took me to the eastern side of the inner forecourt, and when he measured the gate, there he got the same measurements. Its recesses, supports, and vestibule had the above measurements. Both it and its vestibule had windows on both sides. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide, and its vestibule gave on the outer court. Its supports were decorated on both sides with palm trees, and its staircase consisted of 8 steps. Then he took me to the north gate, and I found its measurements to be identical, with the same recesses, supports, vestibule, windows on both sides, and a length of 50 cubits, and a width of 25 cubits. Its supports gave on the outer court. Its supports were decorated on both sides with palm trees, and its staircase consisted of 8 steps. A chamber opened into the gate. There the burnt offering would be washed, and inside the vestibule of the gate there were 2 tables on each side, at which the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering were to be slaughtered. While outside, as one goes up toward the opening of the north gate, there were 2 tables on one side, and there were 2 tables on the other side of the gate's vestibule. Thus there were 4 tables on either flank of the gate, 8 tables in all, at which the sacrifices were to be slaughtered. As for the 4 tables for the burnt offering, they were of hewn stone, 1.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1 cubit high. On them were laid out the instruments with which burnt offerings and sacrifices were slaughtered. Shelves, 1 handbreadth wide, were attached all around the inside, and the sacrificial flesh was laid on the tables. There were chambers for singers in the inner forecourt, 1 beside the north gate facing south, and 1 beside the east gate facing north. The man explained to me, the chamber that faces south is for the priests who perform the duties of the temple, and the chamber that faces north is for the priests who perform the duties of the altar. They are the descendants of Zadok, who alone of the descendants of Levi may approach our Father in heaven to minister to him. He then measured the forecourt, 100 cubits long and 100 cubits broad, 4 square. In front of the temple stood the altar. He took me into the portico of the temple and measured it. The jambs of the portico were 5 cubits deep on either side. The width of the gate opening was 14 cubits, and the flanking wall of the gate was 3 cubits on either side. The portico was 20 cubits wide and 11 cubits deep, and it was by steps that it was reached. There was columns by the jambs on either side. Amen. May I follow my son of the faith with us. About to finish up Ezekiel soon. Father woman, if I could get some more storage on here, I should be able to finish this up, Father woman, either by today or tomorrow. So Father woman, let's get some storage cleared up. May our Father and Son of the faith with us. Legend, if you're watching this, I love you. Be true. Keep going. Keep striving for perfection. Don't ever stop. Any other brother, sister, the same thing to you. May our Father and Son of the faith with us. Amen.